Okay. Well, welcome everyone. The motif that repeats itself in the last 2 days for many of us here in the desert is the whatever one's political views are, is to accept the elections as reality and to move ahead with the work that we do. And the work that we do, those of us here on this screen together, is the work of dialogue, or what I like to call multi-log. My cousin Steve Soslin loves the fact that I made up this word called multi-log, because even though dialogue literally means not just between two, I originally thought it meant between two people, and there's no such thing as a dialogue. Even when two people are alone in a room speaking with each other, there's all those other voices in each individual's ear and brain and heart which are speaking. Learning to live with multi-log and the constant those constant voices, and being able to regulate, to yeah, I was going to say to edit, but to regulate how much we hear from what source at one time. And I'm talking about all the different voices in our life is the art of life, but it's also the doing. And when we sit down and we listen with full attention and with respect and with a serious desire to understand the other, when we listen to the other, that's the work. That's the work we do. I'm getting a little noise here from somebody. If you're not speaking, perhaps just we could mute. Um, okay. Um, that's the work that we do. And we're sitting around these tables right now. We're studying tech, and we're exchanging views. And as I've said many times before, let it emanate from here, at least in my view. I don't know, Steve, if you have any words on this different kind of day that we're studying together.
No, I'm a big fan of multi-log. Multi-log will save the world.
It's one of those words that my father said, you're making up a word, right? I said, yeah, but it's a good one. It's a good one. Okay. All right, then. Does anybody I've given the chance in other study groups for people to give voice to their feelings. I think it's important, especially folks that are living on their own and are not necessarily in any kind of social situation. They can express their voices to real people, listening with real, ears and faces. Would anybody like to say anything before we begin? Okay, then.
Maybe there are no words.
That too. Okay. I think we have to finish up something that we had left over from last week. Um, Chapter 10, verse 22. That's where we left off. Although maybe we'll take a break. We'll get back to the text in a second, and let's go. Yeah.
Uh,
Yes, go ahead.
David, I did want to see if you have a take on how this recent election impacts Israel.
Hmm.
Is it complicated?
It depends for who. For some people who say it simplifies it, because there'll be strong support for what Bibi wants to do, despite declarations of wanting to finish, or maybe in line with declarations of wanting to finish the war quickly. I don't think it bodes well for the Palestinians or for the Lebanese. I don't know about Iran. That's beyond my pay grade to understand that entire dynamic. Um, but I don't want to get into,
No, I love the answer. It depends on.
yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Can I add something, Rabbi? Martha and I were leaving for Israel on Saturday. I'll come back and give you guys a full report in 3 weeks.
Mhm. Yes, of course. And if there's anything that we can help you, Sasha and I can help you make connections. I know you're very connected in Israel, but if there's any particular way, especially in the Jewish community, we have a daughter who lives in Haifa as well.
Okay.
Just let us know, okay?
I am very interested in finding out a response to Steve's question from the locals in Haifa. How do they feel about our elections?
Yeah.
So,
You realize that too is varied. I think the majority of Israelis, as you may have seen, have polled. There's a great majority of Israelis who favor who are happy with the elections because I remember watching the Israeli news, being in Israel, and there was an earthquake. I don't remember which one it was in Northridge in Southern California, San Fernando Valley, where my parents live and many of my people I grew up with live. And 95% of the news coverage was about Israelis in the San Fernando Valley. Now, I know that happens with everybody, right? If there's something that happens when people want to know what Americans or Texans, whatever, wherever you live, but it was like earthquake. This is devastating. And we're worried about just the Israelis who are, who've gone to their friends in Westwood or in Beverly Hills or living out of their cars. There's a tendency in Israel, and I see this as an Israeli American, to be very, very tunnel vision. And I can remember arguing with my study partner at Kerem B'Yavneh, the yeshiva that I went to for 5 years with the Army service. We're still very good friends now today. And although he's extremely orthodox, he's extremely left-wing when it comes to politics in Israel and the United States as well. And him saying, that Nixon was the greatest thing for Israel. And I said, yes, but he's not the greatest thing. That was how I grew up for the United States. And if the United States is not healthy, then that's not going to help Israel as well. So that's one view of looking at it. But the majority will see that the majority of voices that you hear, I think, Ajit, will be those who are very much in favor. It'd be interesting what the Baha'i community says, and it's also interesting what the Arab Christian community of Haifa feels.
I'm going to go stand in front of the statue of Donald Trump in Jerusalem, and I'll take a picture and send it to you.
Okay, I will greatly appreciate that. But be careful if you go up to Ramat Trump, to Trump Heights in the Golan Heights, that apparently missiles fell there the day of the elections.
I'm joking.
Okay.
Having fun.
All right. Yeah. But remains to be seen. Let's take a look now, maybe also dealing with our own feelings, some of us, and it's Psalm 23. And after we read through it, let's, I know it's familiar to most, if not all of you here, but afterwards I'll tell you my feelings and how it connects to this chapter here. So Ajit, would you read for us Psalm 23? It's on the flip side of last week's page.
The Psalm of David. God is my shepherd, I lack nothing. God made me lie down in green pastures and leads me to water in places of repose, renewing my life, guiding me in the right path, as befits the divine name. Though I walk through a valley of deepest darkness, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You spread a table for me in full view of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My drink is abundant. Only goodness and steadfast love shall pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in God's house for many long years.
Interestingly enough, this psalm, while associated with the funeral service in the Christian tradition, was not really part of a funeral service outside of North America. Perhaps it started in Germany already. Its influence, I believe, of the church on the synagogue, which is a healthy and a positive. In for instance, I don't remember hearing the psalm at a funeral. You do hear it here, and I use it often. An early faux pas of mine as a rabbi in my first year, there was a young man who went missing from my neighborhood who had his bar mitzvah in my synagogue before I had gotten there. He was in the army and he went missing, and I was in touch with the family, and they found him a few days later. He had shot himself with his M16 rifle in the mountains above the Dead Sea in Ein Gedi. And as they found his journals that nobody knew about, they realized that he had suffered from deep depression, that he was always the life of the party. It was a serious challenge for a new rabbi as myself to come in and sit with this family each of the evenings of Shiva, the 7 days of mourning. And I prepared a text to study each time. And one of the texts I brought was this text. And his grandmother from South Africa looked at me. She said, "Where the hell did you get this translation? This isn't what the psalm, that's not the psalm. The psalm is because people remember King James Version, right? That's what, my cup runneth over, that kind of English. And this is the New Jewish Publication Society translation. That taught me an important lesson where I may think that the one translation is more academically correct, another one is more correct from an emotional, spiritual point of view. That would be even the King James Version, I think. And I know that that's a difficult, a tender subject in church circles as well, which translation you use. So this isn't, as I often share with congregants or those with whom I'm working over mourning, this is not about the dead person walking in the shadow of death. This is about us walking in the shadow of death. And it may be appropriate for many people, judging from the comments I'm hearing from friends and ones I see on social media. I think this is a pertinent psalm because it leads us to appreciate the greener pastures as well. It leads us to realize what's on the table in front of us. Despite the fact that we are going through a difficult time. But the reason I brought it here today, it was on the sheet before the results of the elections, is that it is a later title, but still it is a Psalm of David, David the shepherd par excellence, who was first taught how to be a shepherd like Moses, emulating Moses as teaching himself or being taught how to lead first with the sheep and then with the people. I think this chapter that we have here is a midrash in many ways in the back of the mind of the author of this psalm, because it's David the shepherd who says, "The Lord is my shepherd." And the combining of these two aspects of a human shepherd and the divine shepherd is what's happened in our chapter. That's exactly the confusion. That's what's happening with Jesus, is that Jesus becomes God-like or God in that aspect of being a shepherd. And this is the transition. We're just about at the turn of the cusp of the book of John, where this is moving from almost the last of the signs into that being in both in the liminal state of being both human and divine. That's my idea, at least. I'm happy to hear reactions, disagreements, or whatever. Don?
Yes, sir. I am in New Jersey and on my phone, and it's uncomfortable. But I think there's that typology throughout the book of John of old Jewish traditions and references given a new twist by the author of John. And this is just one of them. I don't know if I can't remember if we got to the raising of Lazarus, but there's another one that I see in that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't know if that makes sense, but that's
absolutely sure.
Yeah, and Don, I like what you said last week. I think you said it where the whole gospel is midrash in some way, or at least thinking about it in those terms helps me.
And I think it goes to fit into the unity of all the scriptures. It just gives another dimension of God's relationship with people. We tend to isolate it and read it as a separate book, but if we can dig down deep into it, we see all of these connections, and it highlights the mercy of God, I think, to me anyhow.
A great point. The word that was used when I was at Hebrew University was intertextuality.
Intertextuality, yes.
You're giving a spiritual divine dimension to that as well. But regardless of what one believes about divine authorship and inspiration, these folks who are writing, whether it's our author here or the editor of the Book of Psalms who gave the title to that psalm, or whoever gave the title to that psalm, or the stories, the narratives themselves about Moses and David and Abraham and Isaac a little bit less so, but Jacob, these leaders that were shepherds. Yeah. Take a look at Philo of Alexandria. This is the same time as Jesus, right? This is before the book of John, of course, but this is in the air as well. We should never delude ourselves into thinking that the land of Israel is a silo and that the influences, we see this a lot. And what's nice and new for me in the New Testament is this aspect of the diaspora that comes in all the time. That, we had a hint at in this chapter as well. But indeed, so good a thing is shepherding that it is justly ascribed not to kings only and wise men and perfectly cleansed souls, but also to God the all-sovereign. The authority for this inscription is not any ordinary one, but a prophet, whom we do well to trust. This is the way in which the psalmist speaks. The Lord shepherds me, and nothing shall be lacking to me. It's this nexus of humanity and divinity in the character of a shepherd. Okay, that was something I wanted to share, but now let's go ahead with the text from verse 19. Let's see, Michael, would you like to read for us today?
All right, I had to get back to my audio. Yes, verse 19, this is, you're still in the
Chapter 10.
John 10 or?
Yeah. 10,
okay.
19.
Oh, I see it there. Okay, good. Okay, until when do I read 19 until?
Well, let's just read this first paragraph, and then you'll continue, but we'll just say a few words about this first paragraph.
Again, the Jews were divided because of these words. Many of them were saying, he has a demon and is out of his mind. Why listen to him? Others were saying, these are not the words of one who has a demon. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind?
Another step in the way of this ongoing hitgalut, self-showing, reflexive word for as Jesus reveals self-revelation. What? Apparition? I don't know. Anyway.
Manifestation.
Manifestation, that's a good word, yeah. Manifestation of and how does Jesus manifest himself? Trickling the theme that's been going all through these chapters, right? Yes, Richard.
Yeah, did Jews at the time of Jesus believe in demons and possession? I mean, it's certainly not something you find common among Jews today.
I'll offer a correction amongst liberal, progressive Jews and secular Jews, but amongst Orthodox and ultra-Orthodox and Mizrahi, traditional Jews from the Middle Eastern countries, it's far more prevalent. Yeah,
okay.
it's yeah, and look, we just call it something different now, though, right, Richard? We call it I mean, demon, the connection between the word demon and dementia and mental
Mhm.
health issues, right? We name it differently and we don't assign to it, I guess we assign to it chemistry, chemical reasons or deep psychological reasons from the past, from somebody's up, there's nurture and there's nature in both, but we don't call it divine, right? Or we don't call it otherworldly. It's not, okay, right?
Magically, I mean, to me, what we Harvey and I recently watched a movie about some, exorcist possession, and in the movie, and something that Harvey actually believes, the demon is like a physical. I mean, you can't see it, but it's a physical entity that physically enters the body and can be physically expelled, as if it was like a virus or a bacteria. That's an actual organism. That's how he sees it. He sees it as an organism that has an existence separate from a person, but has to exist inside a person. I don't see it that way. I see it more like you say, as a disease.
Right.
That's-
So
anyway.
perhaps somebody could, those that have experience in the Christian community, Christian tradition with demons. Yeah, Steve?
Yeah, I would just say that in the first century, Richard, there was a pervasive sense that we were under the age of this age was under Satan's rule. And as long as we're under the domination of another empire, as long as people are dying then there is evil, pervasive evil. The age to come, which Messiah ushers in, brings the age of spirit. And so I just think that there was this sense that there were dark elements. And I think today, if you don't go the full bore, if you don't go all the way to flapping demons with horns and pitchforks that lurk, like some people literally understand, then I think we can maybe talk about this place has a dark feel to it. There's just that it's almost a vibe that something's off, something's dark, something's not healthy. And to me, that's how I recognize it, because I do think there are ways of thinking that are oppressive and mean-spirited and dark-spirited, whatever language works. But it's a way to talk about that experience.
Yeah, I agree. I've been to places where you walk in to this home or something, and you have this sense of pervasive evil in this home. You don't know what's going on. You walk in and you just want to leave. You don't want to be there. And then there's exactly the opposite. You walk into another place and you feel great without being able to explain it. So there's something there. And I think we're trying to offer explanations for things that we don't understand. We have a tendency to try to reduce everything down to something we can measure. And there is a whole lot that we just don't know.
Well, and not to belabor it, but I think there's a helpful understanding of the Odyssey, where Odysseus, he kind of tests out a place. And if they have reverence, then he will feel welcome and it's safe. If he perceives that there's no reverence with this group or on this island with this people, then he avoids it like the plague or tries to. And reverence in that sense simply means you have a recognition that you're limited. If you don't have reverence, there's a hubris. There's a kind of a self-oriented power that is dangerous.
No.
It's,
She made this comment, and I said I would be very brief. In Colorado, when I was living there, so this is 45 years ago, I was on a hike with some friends, and we went into this field that just seemed, it was dark and depressing, and everyone was like, my God. And I said, something really bad happened in this area. And we did discovered that in that area or nearby, there had been a number of Native American massacres in the 19th century. So
Mhm.
Wow.
there's something to it,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think verse 19 also shows the manifestation of division amongst the Jews, setting the stage of what will happen prospectively. But how this division is manifested is by insults and accusations.
Mhm.
Yeah, and the name for the demon or the evil one or the New Testament calls them unclean spirits, right? And the manifestation is that sense of yeah, just it's dangerous. It's a violent place. Well, no, what I was trying to say is the name of the demonic was the accuser, right? The Satan is the one who accuses. God is the one who blesses.
Okay, so Michael, if you would, let's go on to Hanukkah, the last of the festival, or almost, yeah, the last in the long list of festivals that's mentioned.
I'm sorry, I'm not tracking where that is.
Oh, sorry, the Feast of Dedication. I said Hanukkah, but verse 22.
Verse 22. Okay, good. Okay, I see it there now. At the time of the festival of the dedication, at that time, the festival of the dedication took place in Jerusalem. It was winter, and Jesus was walking in the temple in the portico of Solomon. So the Jews gathered around him and said, "How long will you keep us in suspense? If you are the Messiah, tell us plainly." Jesus answered, "I have told you, and you do not believe. The works that I do in my Father's name testify to me, but you do not believe because you do not belong to my sheep. My sheep hear my voice. I know them. They follow me. I give them eternal life, and they will never perish. No one will snatch them out of my hand. My Father, in regard to what he has given me, is greater than all, and no one can snatch them out of the Father's hand. The Father and I are one."
With each step in the narrative, it's revealed more and more how much, on one hand, there are two. There is the Father and the Son, and yet they are one. Where is Jesus standing? A place called the Porticos of Solomon. Of course, they were called that at the time. They weren't part of Solomon. This is the temple that Herod refurbished, and it was far more impressive from an architectural point of view. But I do see in this the porticos not being in the temple themselves. It's outside. It's on the Temple Mount. It's part of the structure, but it's not in the temple itself. And if I remember correctly, it's where non-Jews could go and impure people could go. They couldn't go further than that. And I see this again as a liminal position. Where is he? He's not in the temple, but he's not out of the temple. He's exactly in the middle ground. And I think this is an echo of what we saw in verse 7. So again, Jesus said to them, "Very truly, I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep." I think that is Jesus symbolically, the whole thing is symbolic, of course, but standing in the gate, next to the gate. Now, it would work better if he was actually at the gate, but that might not have worked with the narrative so much. People can't gather at the gate. People are going in and out of the gate. For those of us who grew up around Jerusalem or visited Jerusalem, it's easy to imagine these places because the steps leading up to the gates to the temple are still there. They've been uncovered. Many of you have seen them. The gates are in the wall. You can see them, but they've been bricked in. The two openings in the entrance, and then next to it off the left are the three openings for, excuse me, the 3 openings for the entrance and the 2 openings for the exit, so that people would leave slower, come in quickly, leave slower. And it's that area above that where the porticos of Solomon were from a.
And David, when you said Hanukkah, at the Feast of the Dedication, isn't this where they reconsecrated the temple after the idols had been placed in the center?
Yeah, so one way of looking at this, of course, is saying that John, the author, wants to have us visit all the stations of the festivals during the year, right? We've talked about that before, and Hanukkah is out there, even though he doesn't have Purim, and Hanukkah is not an important festival. It's not a biblical festival; it's a post-biblical festival. It's biblical if you accept the books of Maccabees as part of the canon, but if you don't, it's post-biblical, and it's a commemoration of the rededication of the temple, modeled after verses from the Hebrew Bible about the rededication under Hezekiah, and the dedication itself under Solomon, and the precursors to that in the book of Numbers. You can find echoes of all those things in the verses in the book of Maccabees that talk about this holiday. The Josephus doesn't call this the holiday of dedication. He calls it the holiday of lights. And we have to this very day, especially in Israel, people will often say Chag Urim Sameach, festival of lights, a happy festival of lights, as opposed to Hanukkah Sameach, which is dedication. So I think what it means here, and maybe this is where you were going, Steve, is that in the same way there's a very Jewish time of year in which we talk about rededication. Jesus, in essence, is the rededication of that symbol for the Jewish people of the time, which was the temple, which by the time this is written, it's already destroyed, right? And that brings us back to what we've brought up many times, is that this is how the vacuum of the destruction of the temple is filled in this circle of disciples of John.
Mm. Yeah.
Do you think there's a time period between verse 19 and verse 11, that whole section there, and verse 22? It does specifically mention winter, but it doesn't in the paragraphs preceding above.
So Don, I think I saw echoes of a debate amongst the commentators on this, the modern commentators, whether the part before is still happening during Tabernacles, Sukkot, or not. And again, I don't know that there needs to be an inner logic to what is a very symbolic text all along, especially if we go with Bishop Spong's interpretation.
It's unusual if there is a distance in months between this verse and this chapter, for him to recall the incident of the shepherd and the sheep, like he did in the beginning of John chapter 10, I think is just interesting.
Yeah.
So
it's 2 months. The time is 2 months between the end of Sukkot, of Tabernacles, and the beginning of Hanukkah is a 2-month period. But yeah, okay. Anything else?
Well, I think 9 ended with the man born blind being what was the word? Cast out of the synagogue. And a lot of commentators try to identify or correlate he was thrown out, even though he was Jewish, with the moment when the Jewish Christians were thrown out, those who believed in Jesus but were Jewish. And so the progression from that, where they're asking the man born blind, well, who did this? Well, maybe a prophet, maybe, and it escalates to Jesus coming up to him and saying, what does he say? He says, where is the end of 9? I don't have it here, but essentially, who do you say I am? And he confesses, the man born blind, you're the Son of God, right? Or Son of Man, I forget. And so there's this progression, and now this makes it clear the Father and I are one. And so he's kind of come out of the closet, it seems to me, in a more a definitive way. And when he says, you don't believe, because if you don't believe, then look at the signs, look at the works. And also he says, I'm not making myself the Son of God. The Father is the Father and I are one because I am the channel. I am the one through whom the Father does these works. And I think as I hear it, Jesus becomes the visible partner of the invisible Father, God,
Yeah.
in a way that they're not one ontologically. At least I don't think John's community is saying that at this point. Certainly by Nicaea in the 4th century, once Christianity was the religion of the empire, then there was this effort to fuse divinity and humanity. But I think here I am and as we'll soon see when he quotes Psalm 82, the sons of God, I think he's moving us towards the understanding that we are all sons and daughters of God, as he makes clear in chapter 13 to 17 in that section that we're coming up upon. I don't know if anybody hears that or wants to comment. Ellen?
Oh, Ellen, sorry. Is this unmute
Ellen,
first?
you're muted.
You muted, Alan.
Thank you. One of the things I am wondering, this is my first time reading this material, and I think when the stuff that I have read out of, think about reading out of the Hebrew scripture, especially the first 5 books, seems to be pretty clear. And the writing in this material seems very gauzy to me. It's and it points out in this part, you're not coming right out and telling us. Why are you tell us yes or no? And I'm curious about that.
Yeah.
Great question.
Ajit, before we, yeah.
I'm going to offer a Baha'i explanation for Jesus saying, I am God, if you don't
That's
mind.
why you're here.
We think of God as a comparison as the sun shining in the sky, and you can't see the sun, you can't look at it, but someone like a Jesus as the most perfect, clean mirror reflecting that light perfectly, the cleanest mirror possible. So when you look at the mirror and the mirror says, when you see me, you see God, that's the truth. When that mirror says, I'm just a mirror, I'm nothing, when Jesus says, why callest thou me good? There is no one good but our Father who's in heaven. The birds of the field have their nest, etc., and the Son of Man had not a place where to lay his head. He's, in one sense, he's talking about his divinity and the divine power reflected through him. And in a different place, he's talking just as a human being. And we also, this will come up in the future, but we also say that the people that killed Jesus, the Romans that executed Jesus, crucified Jesus, killed a human being not the divine power. The divine power rises up again and is eternal. That's kind of sort of the Baha'i explanation for when Jesus says, I and the Father are one. He's telling the truth. When he says, I'm just a human being, he's also telling the truth.
Hmm.
He's the most perfect reflection of the divine.
Don?
Yeah, but I think we have to remember that this book starts off as a book of signs, and the signs progress. What you say here is a further revelation, and I agree. It's vague if you just concentrate on the words. When we get to the raising of Lazarus, there is a claim, though, that is shocking. And the claim is, I am the resurrection and the life. The whole mystery of this code of the Book of Signs, in a sense, becomes clear with that statement.
And I would like to add, Ellen, to the gauziness of it, that these signs, and the signs some call miracles or works that Jesus says, in John's gospel, I believe they function as parables functioned in the Matthew, Mark, and Luke gospels. And remember, Jesus says, I use parables so that hearing, they may not hear. Those with the eyes to see. Those with the ears to hear. And what is that about? Well, I think he's drawing on Isaiah and other texts that talk about our preconceived notions sometimes blind us. If there's no humility or openness to the other, then we just kind of project and move along. But he's also said, my sheep hear my voice. Others don't hear it. I don't think he's being Gnostic here. I don't think he's trying to say some are predestined to be, the ones and others are not. I think he's talking about humility and embodying God's love, and that we, as he will say coming up in a few chapters, he says, in a sense, if I can do it, you can do it too. But the parables are quizzical. They're gauzy. And why I think it's because we tend to, parables are like koans. You can't really get certainty from them. You can't reduce them to certain abstract concepts that you then reject or not. They're more of a way, it's an access, but it keeps hubris from trying to control it, manipulate it, or use it for one's own ends, I think. Does that help? I mean, that's just my take, but.
I would sum up, Ellen, as to your question, and I'm happy to guide you on a tour of very gauzy, like Hebrew biblical passages as well. But your point is well taken, is that it's about process. This is the author's way of giving us the message. This is process. This is not overnight. This is not revolution. This is evolution. That maybe aren't the greatest words, but the process, the slowly unfolding, ongoing revelation, right? Something that, because based on the earlier Hebrew Bible tradition, revelation happened. There's two streams of thought. One is it happened in one place at Sinai, and that was it. Then it happened at other times when prophets spoke, but and so there's two ways to go about it. There was revelation, and the Pharisees held that every tradition, every explanation of the revelation was handed down orally from the time of Moses to their time as well. The other tradition is that of prophecy, of Moses not knowing the answer to certain questions in the Torah. That's a parallel tradition of ongoing revelation. And this is very much part of the school of ongoing revelation. And maybe it is in the New Testament. Far be it from me, I don't know enough about New Testament literature, that there's those two streams as well. Maybe the revelation along with the narratives of Jesus's death on the cross, the things that happen there, perhaps that is more,
David, you just take a glimpse at the book of Revelation by John and see to what extent it has progressed.
Okay. The other thing, Ajit, to your comment and also to Steve's comment before that, and Don about the oneness issue, I saw the mention of an article that I didn't have access to as to the Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is one. The Lord is our God. The Lord is one. Adonai is one. I saw a reference to an article about that in the Gospel of the Shema and the Gospel of John. Wasn't able to access the article, but I love the idea. And then I did see that one of the verses that it referred to was our verse here on verse 30, the Father and I are one. So as to your point, Steve, as opposed to where I was going before, was that, yes, this is a convergence of those two characters, God and Jesus, that I, says Jesus, am part of this one, as are you as well. I love that. That's a very generous, very universal kind of a thing. But that is my intention every day when I say Shema. When I say Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad, Yud He Vav He, which means was, is, will be, that I'm part of that oneness. We're all part of it. I'm part of this universe, which is God, is ever expanding. This is where science helps from a theological point of view for folks like me, this ever expanding infinity of God, then I'm part of. I'm a speck in that, but I'm certainly part of it. We're part of it, what we're doing now today.
Wow. The Hindus would love to hear you say that, Rabbi.
I may have said this before, but I have a Hindu friend here in Palm Springs, and every time
I was born into a Hindu family, so I
remember. So my Hindu friend here, he always says, and Rabbi, how are you doing? And I say, thank God, or in your case, thank the gods.
Yeah, I love that. And I think evolution may fit in the sense of, I love this one-liner that a friend of mine once said, our maker makes us make ourselves. And there is that partnering, cooperating, co-creating, continuing to, develop our humanity.
You said co-creating or procreating? What did you say there? Sorry.
All together.
Yeah. I know you, Ajit.
All right.
By the way, there is evolution built into the teachings of Jesus. It really is when he says, I have many things to say unto you, but you cannot bear them now, howbeit, etc. The evolution is clearly built into the Christian faith.
Well, in John, again, I think specifically the synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, who are they're on the same, they're together, they cover the same material. They give us, in a way, the outside in understanding of what happened, the words, the actions. John, if we'll see, and especially in 13 to 17, it's an inside out take. It's a deepening, I think, of the synoptic gospels. And to your point, Ajit, when he says, I'm leaving, but the Paraclete is coming, the one who walks beside you, so that you have this open-ended partnering multi-log going on through the one who is called to be with us, beside us. The Holy Spirit is another way of thinking about that, which again evolves, it develops. It's not finalized. And now we just believe it. The Bible says it, I believe it, and that settles it. No, that's kind of a dead approach, I think.
Okay, Wayne, would you like to continue reading for us from verse 31?
The Jews took up stones again to stone him. Jesus replied, I have shown you many good works from the Father. For which of these are you going to stone me? The Jews answered, it is not for good work, that we're going to stone you, but for blasphemy, because you, though only human, are making yourself God. Jesus answered, is it not written in your law, I said, you are gods? If those to whom the word of God came were called gods, the scripture cannot be annulled. Can you say that the one whom the Father has sanctified and sent into the world is blaspheming because I said, I am God's son? If I am not doing the works of my Father, then do not believe me. But if I do them, even though you do not believe me, believe the works, so that you may know and understand that the Father is in me and I am in the Father. Then they tried to arrest him again. He escaped from their hands.
Go ahead.
He went away again across the Jordan to the place where John had been baptizing earlier, and he remained there. Many came to him, and they were saying, John performed no sign, but everything that John said about this man was true, and many believed in him there.
Okay, reactions.
It's interesting how John appeared once again.
Richard?
Who's talking for the Jews? Is it all of them, a group of people speaking in one saying the same thing, or is it one person? Is it the chief rabbi? Who? When this is the Jews said, I don't get that.
And this is a bone in your throat. I don't know if that's an expression, but this is a pebble in your shoe for the last few months, isn't it, Richard? Yeah, this ongoing. Steve, I'll let you once again give a deeper explanation.
Yeah, I would just say, Richard, and for Ellen, who I think, Ellen, this you had not read this before or something, but I think the Jews are those who have power over the people. They're the judges. They're the shepherds, the leaders. And I think the Jews, he doesn't mean the Jewish people. He means the Jews who are who have the power to kill.
I get that, but is there one spokesperson? I mean, why does it say it doesn't describe a person?
Yeah, I mean, that part is just vague. And I think it's very unfortunate, to be honest. I think it's created terrible centuries of misunderstanding. And I think like everybody else here are Jewish, right? I mean, the whole community of John are Jews. And when he goes to beyond the Jordan, where he was baptized by John, those people come out, and some believe, some don't. They're all Jews. Well, the Greeks come up in this next chapter, I believe, or in 2 chapters. But right now, it's just kind of it's a confusion.
No, Richard, I think of this as pretty much a literary device used by the compilers of the Christian gospel. I mean, this was done 300 years or so after the crucifixion of Jesus, and the people that compiled it just used the device. I don't think there is a specific person or a specific group in mind. It was just
perhaps
those are throwaway lines.
Perhaps think of it as the chorus in the Greek tragedy. Remember that, Richard?
Oh yeah, of course.
So it's kind of that somebody, and also as people, our own contemporaries tell stories, there's often the they in the story.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of understood who that they is, but really the they, it's not about somebody specific, it's about an opposing view, somebody making my life miserable is the they, the them.
And to that point, and to what Richard said, I do think there's some validity to your pushback, because at this point, when the gospel was finally compiled, the Jewish Christians had been kicked out of the synagogues, right? They had been cursed. And so there is this now the fracture between the Jewish people and those who then start becoming the Greeks who begin to come in, that divide is growing. And there is this feeling of resentment or anger against that group who has kicked them out and cursed them. I mean, that's undeniable to me. Ellen, you were thinking something?
Yes, can you hear me? Yes. I don't know if this is correct, but I think of the community we live in today, and there are Jews who belong to a synagogue and Jews who practice rituals. The word that comes to mind is religiously, but that's not what I really mean. It's an important part of their lives, and there are people who grew up Jewish, but it's not that important to them, and other people who really were born Jewish who are secular. And I'm wondering if that could be the case at this time as well.
I don't know about secular Jews. I'm not sure that existed before before Spinoza. Spinoza is usually thought to be the first, but certainly the wide variation. It's a myth that there was a normative type of Judaism, an absolute myth. You know, I have good news and I have bad news for you folks. The bad news is that if my job has been kind of Steve's job to keep this moving along so that we make some progress in the book of John, we didn't make much progress today. We only got through the end of chapter 10. The good news is that next week's sheet is already ready and you already have it. And the good news is that we got to do this wonderful in-depth stuff. I can't tell you how happy it makes me to be part of this group. And in order for this group, now comes the commercial, in order for this group to continue, we do have our annual fundraiser, and I just put a link in the box. If you're not able to join us for Jews Do the Blues, then please consider sponsoring if you're able. Some of you already have, and I appreciate that very much. But we have a great time, and we'll send you a recording if you can't be here, and if you can be here, then we'll have we'd love to get together. So
I might join you from a hotel room in Haifa if my wife would let me. We'll
you're going
see.
to be there that long? This is like in December.
Oh no.
Okay.
Yeah. No. For next week's session.
Oh, great.
Next
Okay.
Thursday, I will be in Haifa.
Well, thank you all for being here, and let this let the days to come be days of comfort and understanding and kindness, that we all emulate God's presence.
And David, let's talk about my visit to Palm Springs. We were thinking December, so we'll
great.
follow up on that. Okay.
Okay, wonderful. All right, guys, be well.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.